It was an ordinary morning in Charleston, South Carolina. The sun was already warming the streets, and the sound of cars mixed with the distant song of seagulls that flew over the port. In the small house at the end of a quiet street, the routine began. There lived Ethan Hart, an FBI special agent, and his 10-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily was a special child. Born with mild cerebral palsy, she had limited mobility, but that never dimmed the sparkle in her eyes. Her determination and joy were inspiring. She loved to paint, creating colorful worlds where she could feel free. Ethan, a single father, made sure Lily never felt like her limitations defined her. Their relationship was a perfect blend of affection and resilience. Ethan, despite his dangerous and exhausting work, never let the shadows of his professional world invade the home he and Lily had built. He knew that his daughter was his greatest mission. The incident that morning, as Ethan prepared for another day at work, Lily insisted on taking her new power chair to the park. It was a recent gift that gave her more independence. Reluctantly, but confident in the safety of the neighborhood, Ethan agreed, reminding her to call him if she needed anything. When she arrived at the park, Lily parked near the lake, watching the ducks and drawing in her notebook. A few children played in the distance, and the surroundings seemed peaceful. Then everything changed. A local police officer, Officer Grant Wilson, approached her. He seemed to be investigating something, but his tone soon became aggressive. He accused Lily of obstructing the public right-of-way with her chair. Lily, confused and frightened, tried to explain, but Wilson, irritated, demanded that she leave immediately. Before she could respond, he pushed the chair, unbalancing her and knocking her to the ground. Lily fell, hurting her arm, while her chair was overturned on the floor. Amidst the shock and pain, she managed to grab her cell phone and call Ethan. The call Ethan was in a crucial meeting at the FBI when the phone rang. Hearing Lily's shaky voice and realizing what had happened, a wave of fury and worry washed over him. He dropped everything and ran to the park. Upon arriving, he found Lily surrounded by a few pedestrians trying to help her, while Officer Wilson stood arrogantly and indifferently. Ethan, visibly shaken, hugged his daughter, assuring her that everything would be okay. But inside Ethan, something had changed. He was no longer just a concerned father. He was also an agent trained to seek justice, and now he had a clear target. "You had no idea what you just did, officer," Ethan said, with frightening calm. Wilson, noticing Ethan's badge, began to back away. But Ethan's mind was already made up. This was no ordinary day. Ethan took Lily to the hospital to have the wound on her arm checked. Fortunately, it was nothing serious, but the doctor recommended rest and observation. Lily, still scared, held tightly to her father's hand. Ethan tried to remain calm so as not to worry her further, but inside, his mind was racing. After leaving her in the care of his neighbor and friend, Claire, Ethan returned to the FBI. He immediately accessed the database and began investigating Officer Grant Wilson. It didn't take long for him to uncover a troubled history, previous allegations of abuse of power, assault on civilians, and misconduct on duty. However, all the charges against him had been dropped either due to lack of evidence or due to the influence of superiors who covered up his actions. Ethan knew he would need more than just hard evidence. He would need to come up with a strategy to ensure that Wilson faced the consequences of his actions. Determined, he enlisted his partner, Agent Sam Rodriguez, to help him. The corrupted system meanwhile, Wilson began to realize that his situation was about to get out of hand. Upon discovering that Ethan was an FBI agent, he contacted his superior, Lieutenant Randall. Randall, an equally corrupt man, assured Wilson that he would take care of the situation. But Ethan was already one step ahead. He and Sam began to gather all the evidence they could. In addition to the records of the complaints against Wilson, they obtained security camera footage from the park that clearly showed the moment Lily was attacked. The video was devastating and indisputable. The bigger challenge, however, would be to confront the protection system that kept Wilson from getting away with it. Ethan knew that if he went directly after Wilson, he risked alerting other corrupt officials, giving them time to destroy evidence and create legal obstacles. He needed a more surgical approach. Unexpected allies at this point. Ethan's neighbor Claire revealed that she had a brother, Michael, who was a civil rights attorney and had previously dealt with police brutality cases. With Michael's help, Ethan planned a coordinated action. While Michael worked on the legal side, Sam infiltrated the local police department, pretending to be investigating another case, but actually gathering information about Randall and other officers' involvement in corruption. The pressure began to mount. Wilson began to realize that he was being watched. Nervous, he tried to intimidate witnesses, but Ethan and his team had already anticipated this. Turnaround at the height of the tension, Wilson made a fatal mistake during a nighttime approach. He was caught intimidating a young man who was recording with his cell phone. The video was quickly posted online, gaining national attention. Now, there was no way to hide it anymore. With the media attention and the weight of the evidence piling up, Ethan knew he was close to dismantling the corrupt system that protected Wilson. However, this also made the situation more dangerous. Wilson and Randall, desperate, might resort to extreme measures to protect their secrets. Ethan, however, was determined to bring justice for Lily and all the forgotten victims. Days after the video was released, the local police department became the focus of attention. Protests began to erupt outside the police station, with signs demanding justice and an end to impunity. The pressure on Lieutenant Randall and Officer Wilson was mounting, but they still had internal allies willing to protect them. Ethan, for his part, knew that the situation was about to explode. He continued to gather evidence, but he needed a decisive blow to break the cycle of corruption. Then an unexpected opportunity arose. An anonymous source one night, while Ethan was sifting through data in his office, he received an encrypted email. The message came from someone who identified himself only as Shadow, an internal officer in the police department who was willing to reveal crucial information. The anonymous person claimed to have evidence that Randall was not only covering up Wilson's crimes, but was also involved in a larger scheme of information trafficking and bribery. The message included documents and recordings that incriminated Randall and other high-ranking members. However, Shadow warned that danger was imminent. Randall had discovered that Ethan was getting closer to the truth and planned to silence him. The attack that same night, as Ethan was driving home, he realized he was being followed. He tried to lose them, but as he approached a secluded road, 2 vehicles blocked his path. 4 armed men got out, clearly sent by Randall. Ethan was not only a seasoned agent, but also someone with rigorous combat training. He used the darkness and terrain to his advantage, managing to disarm 2 of the attackers and immobilize the others. However, the message was clear. Randall was willing to do anything to keep his secrets. Upon returning home, Ethan found Lily frightened after hearing about the attack. Holding her hands, he promised, "No one will hurt you again, Lily. I will finish what I started." A painful pause as Ethan prepared his next move. The investigation forced him to revisit a painful part of his past. His wife, Sarah, had been killed years earlier in a shootout involving corrupt police officers. Though the case had never been solved, Ethan now saw connections between those responsible for Sarah's death and Randall's scheme. This revelation rekindled a sense of personal revenge in Ethan, but he knew he had to keep a cool head. Now, the fight was not just for Lily, but also for Sarah and for all the victims of a corrupt system. The decisive plan with Shadow's help, Ethan devised an audacious plan. He decided to publicly release the compromising documents and recordings, but in a way that exposed the scheme on a national scale. The operation would be risky, but he had the support of Sam, Michael, and even some trusted journalists who were willing to take the story forward. Meanwhile, a desperate Wilson began to show signs of losing control. He confronted Randall, demanding protection, but the lieutenant made it clear that if necessary, he would sacrifice Wilson to save his own skin. Feeling betrayed, Wilson committed an impulsive act. He kidnapped Claire, Ethan's neighbor. As a way of trying to negotiate his freedom, this was the ultimate turning point. Now the situation had become personal for Ethan in ways he never imagined. Claire's kidnapping was a heavy blow, but Ethan wasted no time. He knew Wilson was desperate and dangerous, but he also knew that this desperation could be used against him. Wilson had left a message on Ethan's phone. If you want to see her alive, give up everything. Erase the evidence. And come alone to negotiate. Wilson's voice was strained, and Ethan recognized the panic. He wasn't an experienced kidnapper, and that gave Ethan an advantage. However, time was against him. A rescue in progress with the help of Sam and other FBI agents who trusted him, Ethan began an operation to locate Claire. Using tracking technology, they were able to pinpoint the approximate location of the call, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Ethan prepared himself for the confrontation. Before he left, he had a conversation with Lily. Daddy will bring Claire back. And when I get back, this will all be over. Lily, holding back tears, replied firmly, I believe in you. The confrontation arriving at the warehouse, Ethan found Wilson agitated, holding Claire hostage. With the gun pointed at her, Wilson tried to maintain control. You think you can take down the entire system? You have no idea who you're dealing with. Wilson shouted. Ethan, keeping calm, replied, You've already lost, Wilson. We already have all the evidence. And the only choice you have now is whether you want to get out of here alive. The tension increased. Ethan managed to distract Wilson enough to allow Sam and his team to go in and rescue Claire. In a moment of desperation, Wilson tried to flee, but was quickly detained. Revelations and reflections with Wilson in custody, Ethan confronted Randall. Using the recordings and documents that linked the lieutenant to the corruption scheme and Ethan's tragic past, under pressure and with no way out, Randall tried to negotiate his immunity, but Ethan refused. You destroyed lives, Randall. And now, finally, you're going to pay for it. As higher authorities took control of the case, Ethan felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. He had managed to protect his daughter, save Claire, and expose a corrupt system that had been operating for years. Personal growth in the process, Ethan realized that revenge wasn't his only goal. He had grown as a father, a friend, and an agent. He taught Lily and himself that true strength comes from facing pain and turning it into something positive. That night, back home, Ethan sat next to Lily. She looked at him with pride. You did it, Dad. Ethan smiled, hugging her. We did it, Lily. Always together. The day of the trial of Grant Wilson and Lieutenant Randall had arrived. The Charleston courthouse was packed. Journalists, activists, and ordinary citizens were in attendance, eager for justice. The case had become a symbol of the fight against police corruption, and expectations were high. Lily, wearing a blue dress and her new wheelchair, was sitting in the front row, next to Claire and Sam. She had insisted on being there to support her father. Ethan, in a suit, looked calm, but inside, he felt the pressure of the moment. This was the culmination of weeks of investigation, sacrifices, and dangers. The legal battle. Michael, the civil rights attorney, opened the case with a powerful statement, presenting the evidence he had gathered, recordings, records of bribes, and the video of the attack on Lily. Each piece of evidence was like a direct hit against the defendants. Randall tried to maintain his composure, but his expression betrayed nervousness. He knew there was no escape now. Wilson, on the other hand, looked dejected, aware that he had been abandoned by those who had once protected him. The defense tried to argue that Wilson's actions were a misunderstanding and that Randall had no direct involvement in the crimes. However, the evidence was overwhelming. When the video of the attack on Lily was played, a heavy silence fell over the courtroom. Ethan, watching everyone's reactions, felt a mixture of pain and determination. The image of his daughter being knocked to the ground was difficult to watch, but he knew this moment was crucial to achieving justice. Lily's testimony at a key moment, Michael called Lily to the witness stand. The room fell silent as she slowly moved her chair to the center. In a calm but firm voice, Lily recounted what had happened that day in the park. She spoke of the fear she felt, but also of the strength she found in her father and the friends who supported her. Her courage moved everyone in the room. I just want no one else to go through what I went through, Lily said, her eyes shining. The final twist, just when it seemed like everything was under control, Randall made a desperate move. He asked to testify, hoping to reduce his sentence by cooperating. What no one expected was the revelation he would make. I wasn't the one who started the scheme. There are higher-ranking figures who remain untouchable. Randall began naming politicians and high-ranking officials involved in the corruption scheme. The room was filled with murmurs and agitation. This moment brought home the true extent of the problem, showing that Ethan's struggle was just one part of a much larger problem. The sentence after days of trial, the verdict was announced. Grant Wilson and Randall were found guilty of all crimes. The sentence was severe, including long years in prison and the loss of their positions and benefits. The room erupted in applause, but for Ethan, the fight didn't end there. He knew there was still more to do to dismantle the entire corruption scheme revealed. As he walked out of the courtroom, Lily held his hand. You did it, Dad. But what next? Ethan smiled, a determined glint in his eyes. Now, we move forward. Stronger than ever, the weeks following the trial brought a new sense of normalcy for Ethan and Lily. Life didn't go back to the way it was before. In fact, it became something better. The small community of Charleston now saw Ethan not just as an FBI agent, but as a symbol of courage and resilience. Lily returned to the park where the incident had occurred. Accompanied by Ethan and Claire, she painted a new picture, a bright, serene sky with a rainbow cutting across the horizon. For her, that place was no longer a reminder of fear, but a symbol of overcoming, reconstruction, and justice. The impact of Ethan's case reverberated beyond Charleston. The federal government launched a broad investigation into local police forces in other states, seeking to dismantle similar networks of corruption. Ethan was invited to participate as a special consultant, offering his expertise and insights. However, he knew he still had to balance his work with his role as a father. Lily was and always would be his priority. Despite his new responsibilities, Ethan set clear rules for himself. Time with Lily was sacred. New beginnings. Claire, now closer to Ethan and Lily, became almost a mother figure to the girl. Together, they began planning trips, something Lily had always dreamed of. The first destination would be Washington, D.C., where Lily wanted to visit the museums and, especially, the FBI headquarters to see where her father worked. Michael, the lawyer who played a crucial role in the case, founded a nonprofit to help victims of police abuse. He often asked Ethan to give speeches and share his story. Ethan was hesitant, but Lily encouraged him. Your story can inspire others, Dad. You always said we should make a difference, right? Final reflection on a quiet night. Ethan and Lily sat on the porch, looking at the stars. You know, Lily, Ethan began, his voice soft. I never imagined we would go through all this. But you showed me that, even in the darkest moments, there is always light. You are my light. Lily smiled and replied, and you're my hero, Daddy. Ethan held her hand, finally feeling at peace. He knew the world was still imperfect and that there would be challenges ahead. But together, he and Lily could face anything. Years have passed since Ethan Blake's battle against police corruption became the stuff of legend in his hometown. The impact of his struggle echoed not only in Charleston, but across the country, where many saw his story as an example of courage and resilience. He was no longer just an FBI agent. He was a symbol of justice, a man who stood up to a rotten system to save his daughter and dismantle a network of corruption that seemed unbreakable. Today, Ethan and Lily were in a very different place. After Randall and Wilson were arrested and all the corruption in the local police department was exposed, many members of the former leadership were removed and arrested. Charleston, which had previously been mired in a cycle of fear and impunity, was now beginning to see real change. With the support of the media and political figures who took the initiative, reforms in the police and justice system began to be implemented, but not all ghosts had been exorcised. Although the victory was great, Ethan and Lily's scars were still there, visible only to them. Lily, now 16, continued to struggle with the daily challenges of disability, but her smile was brighter than ever. She had grown into a strong and determined young woman, with big dreams of following in her father's footsteps into a career in law, to fight for justice and human rights. "Daddy, what would you do if you had to start all over again?" Lily asked Ethan as they stood in their garden, watching the sunset, a ritual they had both adopted after everything they had been through. The question was simple, but it carried the weight of all the suffering they had faced. Ethan looked at his daughter, his eyes filled with pride. He knew she had been his greatest source of strength throughout the entire process. Just watching her grow into a strong, independent woman made all the sacrifices worth it. "If I had to start all over again?" Ethan thought for a moment, as if the words were heavy. "I think I would start the same way. Because in the end, everything we did was to make sure you had a better future." He no longer had to prove anything to anyone. The system had been broken, justice had finally been served, and revenge, though sweet, now seemed like a distant echo. The real triumph was the change he and Lily had created, the difference they had made in the lives of so many others. "Now we are free. And you, Lily, are going to change the world. I believe in you." The gentle wind that swayed the trees around him seemed to agree with his words. Deep down, Ethan knew that what mattered most now was the legacy he would leave behind, not of revenge, but of transformation. Lily carried the spirit of justice and courage he had always wanted for her. As the sun slowly set over the horizon, Ethan and Lily were ready to face the future together. For them, the fight would never end, but now, by each other's side, they were stronger than ever. And so, the story of Ethan and Lily Blake would become a legend of courage and hope, remembered for generations as a reminder that, in the end, love and justice always prevail.